This cast iron tool looks ordinary, but its corrugated rollers hint at a forgotten purpose. No one makes these anymore, and finding one outside a museum is rare. One roller is fixed, the other pivots on a hinge, allowing them to press together. It feels substantial, built for purpose, yet its form is so specific, so unusual. Do you know what this was for? Most people have no idea. This tool, once a common sight in American homes, now sits in silent retirement, its purpose swallowed by time and technology. This, my friends, is a fluting iron, a device that, for much of the 1800s, was essential for any laundress or housewife who wished to maintain a fashionable wardrobe. Before the advent of modern pressing and fabric finishes, elaborate collars and cuffs, particularly those made of fine linen or cotton, were often adorned with intricate ruffles and pleats. To achieve that crisp, perfectly crimped edge, this heated iron was indispensable. Imagine the scene: a busy wash day, clothes drying on the line, the scent of lye soap in the air. Once dried, the starched garments would be brought in. The fluting iron, often heated on a stove top or by placing hot slugs of metal inside its hollow rollers, would be ready. The laundress would carefully feed the ruffled edge of a collar or cuff between the corrugated rollers, pressing down firmly. With a practiced motion, she'd draw the fabric through, and out would emerge a perfectly crimped, evenly pleated ruffle, stiff and elegant. It was a painstaking task, a true art of domesticity, requiring patience and a steady hand. The surprising detail? Some models had detachable rollers, allowing for different crimping patterns, from fine ruffles to broader pleats. But as fashion shifted away from such elaborate adornments, and electric irons with steam functions offered simpler pressing, the fluting iron quietly faded from use, leaving its legacy to antique collectors. Moving from the delicate world of textiles to the robust demands of the farm, we encounter a tool that spoke to the very foundation of agrarian life. This next piece is a large, hand-forged iron hook, often with a sturdy wooden handle, sometimes just a heavy metal shaft terminating in a powerful, curved barb. It's too large for a fishing hook, too blunt for a weapon. Its weight suggests serious work. This is a bale hook. For centuries, farmers, warehousemen, and longshoremen relied on this deceptively simple tool to move heavy bales of hay, cotton, or wool. Before mechanization, every bale, weighing hundreds of pounds, had to be moved by hand. The bale hook provided the leverage and grip. The worker would thrust the sharp point into the tightly bound bale, sinking it deep enough to get a secure hold, then use the handle to lift, pull, and drag. It saved backs, offering a direct, powerful connection to the unwieldy load. The clever detail lies in its simplicity. No moving parts, just pure leverage and a point designed to pierce and hold without tearing too much. It disappeared not because of a better hook, but because the bales themselves changed. Modern baling equipment now produces denser, often plastic-wrapped cubes or large round bales, handled by tractors and forklifts. The age of the individual moving massive bales by hand is largely over, and with it, the ubiquity of the bale hook. Speaking of farms, the next item takes us to the dairy. Imagine a wooden paddle, roughly a foot or so long, often with a flat, wide blade on one end, and sometimes a ridged or corrugated surface on the other. It doesn't look like a cooking utensil, nor a stirring spoon. The wood is usually sturdy, often maple or oak, well worn from use. This is a butter paddle, or sometimes called a butter worker. In the days before refrigeration and industrial creameries, making butter was a daily chore on most farms. After churning, the freshly separated butter often contained excess buttermilk and water, which needed to be squeezed out to improve its keeping quality and texture. The butter paddle was essential for this. The housewife or dairymaid would repeatedly press and fold the butter with the paddle, working out the remaining liquid, often in a large wooden bowl or on a cool marble slab. The ridged side, if present, helped to work out the last bits of moisture and consolidate the butter. The surprise? Beyond practical use, these paddles were also used to shape the butter into decorative molds, stamping them with intricate patterns before market. The butter paddle became obsolete with the rise of mechanical butter churns and large-scale creameries, where industrial processes efficiently separate and package butter, removing the need for this meticulous handworking process. Did your grandfather have one of these in his shed? Tell me below. Our journey now takes us from the farm kitchen to the bustling world of the blacksmith shop. This tool is stout, made entirely of iron, with a handle on one end and a peculiar, often conical or tapered projection on the other. It's too heavy for a hammer, too blunt for a chisel, and too specialized for a general striking tool. It often shows signs of heavy impact. This is a blacksmith's hardy, not a person, but a tool. It fits into the square hole, known as the hardy hole, on the face of an anvil. It acted as a specialized cutting or shaping tool, standing upright on the anvil. Blacksmiths would place hot metal over the hardy's blade or point and strike it with a hammer, effectively shearing, punching, or forming the metal. There were many types of hardies: cutting hardies with a sharp edge, hot cutting hardies with blunter edges for hot metal, and various forming hardies for bending or shaping specific curves. The surprising ingenuity is how it transformed the anvil from just a striking surface into a multifunctional workstation, allowing for intricate cuts and precise shaping that would be impossible with just a hammer and chisel. The hardy faded as modern metalworking evolved, with power tools like hydraulic shears, bandsaws, and sophisticated presses taking over the tasks once performed by hand and hammer. From the thunderous forge, we shift to the quiet precision of the carpenter's bench. This next tool looks like a small, flat-bottomed iron box, perhaps 3 or 4 inches long, with an angled slot in its side and a small wooden knob on top. It feels dense, like a miniature plane, but its opening is quite peculiar. This is a router plane, not the noisy electric router of today, but its quiet, hand-powered ancestor. Before specialized power tools, woodworkers needed a way to cut precise dados, grooves, and rabbets, often for fitting joints or inlay work. The router plane, with its adjustable blade extending beneath its flat sole, allowed the craftsman to set a precise depth. By running the plane across a piece of wood, often guided by a fence or straight edge, it would shave off thin layers, creating a perfectly flat-bottomed, consistent groove. The clever part was the precise depth adjustment, allowing for incredibly accurate work. It disappeared because electric routers, with their powerful motors and interchangeable bits, offered far greater speed, versatility, and efficiency for cutting grooves and profiles, making the hand router plane a tool mostly for specialist joiners or dedicated enthusiasts. Let's move to a less common, yet once vital, trade: the cooper. A cooper made barrels, and barrels were once the primary method of storing and transporting everything from water and wine to nails and salted fish. This tool is a long, curved iron blade, often several feet long, with a handle at one end and a very specific, sharp curve. It looks like a giant, specialized carving knife. This is a cooper's adze, or sometimes a cooper's howl. Its purpose was to shape the inside surface of barrel staves. After the staves were cut and rough-shaped, the cooper needed to smooth and bevel their inner edges, ensuring they fit together perfectly to form a watertight cylinder. The long, curved blade of the howl, often wielded with a careful rocking motion, allowed the cooper to precisely shave the internal curve of the stave, following the natural arc of the barrel. The surprising aspect is the immense skill required. Each stave had to be meticulously shaped to form a perfect curve, all by eye and feel. The howl disappeared as wooden barrels were largely replaced by metal drums, plastic containers, and other modern packaging materials. The trade of coopering, while still practiced for specialty items like whiskey barrels, is a shadow of its former self, taking its specialized tools with it. Our final stop is back in the realm of the household, but for a task less about glamour and more about everyday sustenance. This last item is a small, cast-iron device, perhaps 6 inches tall, with a funnel-like opening at the top and a small crank on the side. Below, there's a spout or a series of holes. It looks like a miniature hand-cranked machine, too small for grinding grains, too complex for just pouring. This is a hand-cranked apple peeler, corer, and slicer. Before store-bought canned goods and pre-cut produce, preparing fruits for pies, sauces, or drying was an incredibly labor-intensive process. This ingenious device clamped onto a table. You'd spear an apple onto a prong, crank the handle, and a series of blades would simultaneously peel the skin, remove the core, and often slice the apple into rings or spirals, all in one swift motion. It was a marvel of mechanical efficiency for its time, dramatically speeding up the arduous task of preparing large quantities of apples. The cleverness was in its multifunctionality, transforming a laborious hand task into a semi-automated one. Its demise came with the advent of electric food processors, improved canning techniques, and the sheer availability of pre-prepared fruits in grocery stores, rendering this domestic workhorse largely obsolete. These forgotten tools, each a testament to human ingenuity and the demands of their era, connect us to the hands that built America. They whisper stories of hard work, clever solutions, and a world where manual skill was paramount. They remind us that necessity truly is the mother of invention, and that even the most indispensable tools can one day fade into history, leaving only their quiet forms as a legacy. If you guessed it before the reveal, you know your history. Subscribe, a forgotten tool rediscovered every day.